Will erythromelalgia kill you? No, but the hard truth is sometimes you wish it would. I'm Dr. Lauren Sparks. I'm a doctorally trained nurse practitioner. I'm also a therapist. I've walked through the fire of erythromelalgia as well as chronic inflammatory response syndrome. I'm here to tell you I have hope for your healing. Lots of it. Is EM life-threatening? No. Is that good news? Not necessarily. The reality is that when we have EM, we really suffer. I often prayed to die or to be healed. I kept going for my dog mostly. When I was seen at the Mayo Clinic, the doctor there, who was trying to be very compassionate, said the good news is that this disease process will not kill you. And I was so beaten down by the chronic pain. It takes up so much brain space to be in chronic pain that I really thought in the back of my head, but I didn't say it. I don't know that that is good news. A lot of us with EM have suicidal ideation, and we often wish that the pain could be taken from us. And it's often in the form of not being on the earth anymore. So, with that depressing news, how do we find ways forward? The reality is that EM is not caused by any sort of mental deficit. It's not in your head. It is a literal pain phenomenon. And there are ways that we can find support because although mental health does not drive EM, it can worsen those symptoms of EM. And so one thing I would invite you into considering is potentially joining an EM community support circle or finding a therapist who really does understand EM. I also want you to understand that you're not alone, that these thoughts are very common for people with our disease process. It helped me to understand that when we are stuck in this hamster wheel of pain, I often describe my experience of feeling like I was stuck in a cage and I couldn't get out. No matter which way I twisted or turned, I could not get out. And this is, I think, the definition of suffering. I have made a video in the past, a very early video, where I talked about the work of a woman that spoke about her experience within the Holocaust. And I received a lot of criticism actually for that video, and I was in no way comparing my life experience with hers. But I do believe that comparative suffering is not helpful, and that suffering is suffering. And sometimes we can gain insight and wisdom, and we can feel a kinship when we read about another person and how they handled their suffering. And so I did find some things that she said very helpful. She talked about feeling as if she was stuck in the circuitry of pain, and that really resonated with me. It was the first time I'd ever heard anyone speak of that. CIRS, chronic inflammatory response syndrome, was the root cause of my erythromelalgia. And actually treating my CIRS put my EM into complete remission. And if it had not, or if I had only seen some improvement, I would still want to be able to speak to those thoughts that showed up that said, I would rather not live in this body. And one thing I would like to say is the idea that we don't have to live in a painful body, the idea that we have some agency and that we could do something to end the pain, is often sort of the bridge that gets us through to the next day. And so certainly if you're experiencing suicidal ideation and you can't be safe, I would encourage you to go to your closest emergency department. I want you to get help. When it's a more passive suicidal ideation where it's like, I wish that I go to sleep and not wake up, when it's not active with a plan and something that you intend to act on, I believe it serves more as a bridge for us. The idea that I didn't have to keep living like this sometimes gave me the strength and courage to get through a really bad flare. The idea that I didn't have to keep living like this sometimes gave me the strength to make it through to the next day. And so I do like to help people understand why their brain would invite them into the idea that they could end the suffering. I think sometimes it is sort of a temporary measure that helps us move through into the next day. And in that way, it can be helpful. Again, though, if it's becoming active, if you feel like you cannot stay safe, I really do encourage you to reach out and get help. My chronic inflammatory response syndrome was the root cause of my EM. My EM was severe. I was often guided around in a wheelchair or on a scooter. My EM went from intermittent flares to constant flares. My quality of life diminished drastically. And I was just stuck in the circuitry of pain, where from minute to minute, I was just living my life in survival mode. I hope that what I'm sharing will help benefit you, will give you some feeling of being less alone in your journey, but also give you tips, tricks, tools. As a community, we find ways forward together. EM is not life-threatening, but you are suffering. And I'm not going to paint over that with pink paint. And sometimes you may have thoughts of not wanting to continue to live in this body. And often those thoughts are a bridge that are getting you through to the next day. To learn more about my story of EM, see this video. And you can also learn more about my story of how chronic inflammatory response syndrome was the root cause of my EM with this video. I look forward to journeying together, and until next time, take good care and hold on to hope.